All right, welcome back to the Elias Makos Show. Now, how do you fight back against artificial intelligence if it's everywhere? Every time you open up a social network, every time you do a Google search, seems like AI is everywhere, and perhaps it's time to fight back. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that it's time for the revenge of the book. Let's talk a little bit more about this with Mitch Joel. You know him and love him as a tech advisor and co-founder of ThinkersOne, and he's with us this morning. Hi, Mitch.
Good morning, Elias. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit more about this. Why should we be looking towards the book today in 2025 as an answer to some of the stuff we're seeing in technology?
So a lot of this is coming out of the idea of what do we do in particular with our kids, and what we're realizing in the research of how do we actually raise a reader in this age of digital distraction is that we ourselves are also part of the problem, challenge, and opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing obviously out of the gates is that reading, unlike learning languages, is a very different form of function of what we do. I'm a big proponent of reading. I try to read at least a book every single week. And we've also seen, obviously, reading scores have definitely declined here in North America. It's quite dramatic. But we're also seeing that the top performing readers are actually doing better than ever before, which is a very interesting dichotomy, which means the ones that are reading are not just benefiting in terms of brain rot and staying away from all of that. They're actually performing overall better, maybe because the gap has widened or the gap has become a chasm.
So I've also heard that reading a book perform as a bit of a reset on the brain. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what they're saying is that reading isn't really natural. Unlike speaking, right, like humans actually develop organically, reading is an acquired skill. And that skill literally rewires the brain. It helps us with things like visual processing. It helps us with language comprehension. It helps us with our memory systems. And that the way we can both develop, obviously reading is important, but in this world where a lot of the digital components, the apps, the games, etc., are hacking at that. They're trying to manipulate us. They're using psychology and other techniques to break that because they want us in that gambling mindset. And so the idea here is that if we can model better, perhaps we can push away the power of what is happening to our brains in this attention-starved world.
So, Mitch, I'm trying to get to, because growing up, we had screens. There was the boob tube, there was television, there was all these thoughts about video games. We even had handheld video games. So maybe we didn't have the internet in our hands 24/7, but we had a Game Boy or a Game Gear or a PlayStation Portable. We've had screens in our hands and pervasive everywhere for a long time. What's different about 2025?
Yeah, things have changed dramatically because it isn't about technology. So technology is good. I'm not going to be the anti-technology person. Technology has just changed to actually compete with these cognitive processes that we need very deeply. And so what people don't look, I'm a child of the 80s. I was all head down in video games as well. But that was a form prior to these technologies and techniques of almost long form content. It actually required sustained focus. We would play these games. They were very good mental exercises, actually. But what happened now is that the technology has changed it in a way where it's actually, causing us big problems in terms of what it's doing to us, which is, it didn't track our behavior, didn't try to sell us anything. It didn't fragment our attention into these bite-sized dopamine hits. It's the problem in how the technology has evolved. And so again, I have an iPad, I have multiple iPads. What are we doing on them versus is it technology? So again, the bifurcation here isn't about technology or screens. That can be very good for us if we're using the right things on it and also creating the right context in our homes for when we use this stuff and when we don't.
We're with Mitch Joel, the author of 6 Pixels of Separation and CTRL ALT Delete. So Mitch, what is it? A book, it's a physical thing that exists in the real world. Because it's real, it's in our hands. What are some of the other things that reading a book can build?
One is, my theory is it's not so much reading, it's what you're doing in the moment. So especially when you're talking about kids and studying, although I'd make the argument that I do a lot of this in my work, it's almost like a 3 or 4 pronged approach. One is we're reading it. 2 is, do we understand what we're reading? So how do we understand what we're reading? We do this by taking notes, by highlighting, by thinking about it. Then that third step of thinking about it is an important part. I'm a big fan of outputting. And so you might think, well, I'm not a journalist like you, Mitch. I don't write articles or do a podcast. That's fine. You could post on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. I read this book. Here are the 3 key takeaways that I thought about it. This is why it's important. For your kids, the translation of that is really important because right now we know that it's not about reading. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for comprehension. And comprehension is, how did you read it? How did you take it in? What did you think about it? And what's the output of it? So for me, it's less about this consumption of videos where you go, that was funny, I share it. In the longer form of it, it forces you to not just think, but to do something with that information. That's the key for all of us. And I would also argue that if you're spending 30 minutes on a Sunday with your coffee listening to CJD and reading a book, you're also modeling. And that's the big thing here. Our kids don't see what we're doing on the screens. They just see us on the screens and they're modeling after that.
Mitch, reports of the book's demise, we've heard them many times over the years. When ebooks came out, books are dead. Never happened. In fact, book sales had a rebound. Now we're hearing, AI is frying everyone's brains. Books are dead. Obviously, I could go to those examples. Maybe reports of the book's death are greatly exaggerated. But I'm looking at this story out of Warsaw. Metro system there. They're opening up libraries in the metro in order to get people maybe more convenient access to books. So what's your crystal ball say about the future of the book?
Look, I don't think it's about reading or eliminating technology. I think it's about all of us creating space where we can practice or think about how do we have this idea of deep attention. That's where we want to flourish. That's where our brains will flourish. So what I'm seeing out of Warsaw, Poland is fantastic. I should also mention here in Montreal, we have Mini Biblios, which is the former Fraser Hickson Library. They've deployed over 150 of these mini libraries. They have them in CPEs and YMCAs, in galleries, in other places. We have to look for the places. We have, if you have a member of your local public library, you can get stuff digitally as well there. Tons of opportunities for you to just cognitively think about where in my day can I add in something to, and I can tell you, look, my brain broke for a while ago. Definitely, I was down the rabbit hole of news. And I made a concerted effort of 15 minutes of just book reading. And by the way, I do it on my iPad, on my Kindle app.
Wow.
It has completely rewired it. You will see it instantly. And there's no better feeling than knowing that you're passing that gift on to your kids, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, your friends. Tons of opportunities to do this. If you haven't seen this Warsaw Metro idea, just look it up. It's called Metroteka. And it looks, I don't know about you, Elias, I'd love to go there just to hang out and have a coffee. It looks amazing.
It looks like a great library, but I should point this out, Mitch. Our libraries in this city are phenomenal. Whether local libraries that we've got that our family has in NDG are exceptional. The Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales du Québec, the bank right downtown, is insane, and we're really lucky in that respect in the city. Got to leave it there, Mitch. Be well. Come back soon.
Happy reading.
Happy reading to you. That's Mitch Joel, author of 6 Pixels of Separation and CTRL ALT Delete.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.